Okay guys, welcome to the next video. We are back on my daughter's Subaru. Now, this is a little less complex than the ball joint I tried to do last year. We are going to be replacing the front brake pads and rotors. I've already taken off the wheel. If you watch enough of my videos or any other videos, you know how to do that. So first you got to take the two bolts here and here on the caliper itself off, and they are 14 millimeter. Crack them both loose. The bottom one came out with my fingers and this one's not, so hopefully that's not a problem later. Now these brake pads aren't bad. They are still pretty decent pads, but what she's getting is she's getting a shaking when she stops, which means these rotors are more than likely warped. So see, it's really tight here, so get yourself a pair of pliers, or I've got a small pry bar, and just push in against the rotor and force the caliper to go back in a little bit, enough to get it off, and then you can pry it off just like that. Looks like I got some rust inside the caliper piston. Now she has a double piston caliper, so there's two pistons pushing on these brake pads. So you've all seen my caliper squisher tool, and I have one for the single and the double piston. So I'm glad I remembered to bring this one home, because I only have a single one at home. So we're going to squeeze them in, and hopefully it squeezes in okay, which it is, because sometimes one piston will squeeze in faster or get stuck, but this is working great. So it's all squished in. So we are setting that off to the side. And now we're going to get the rear pad. Seems to be stuck in there a little bit. So a little bit of pressure will get that out. See, these pads are still really good. They're like 8 bonded. And normally I wouldn't change them because they're not too bad. But with the rotor vibration she's getting, it's better to do pads and rotors at the same time. So next there's a two 17 millimeter bolts. I'll take you in there. See, there's a 17 millimeter bolt right here and one up here. This one's right behind the shot there, the strut bolt, and it's going to be a little bit of a pain. Hopefully not too much though. So we're going to switch to the 17 millimeter. And the smaller ratchet is not going to take it off, so we just move on to the big ratchet. And hope it works. And pre to the ball joint video, I did shock the wheel over on the other side. And I have a wheel under the back, so hopefully we don't have an incident like with the ball joint where it just kind of fell all over me. Okay, so I can't get the big socket onto the upper one because of the strut. So the smaller one, if you don't have a big ratchet, half-inch ratchet drive, just use the hammer like I just did for the smaller one, because you're going to need some force to get that out to start moving. So they're loose, and at least the top one is coming out with my fingers. Because most of the new cars now have brackets holding your rotor on. Unlike my truck where, you know, it's just the caliper. And that's the only bolts you got to remove. There's 4 on most new cars. So once you get them crack free, you can use the fingers or a ratchet, whatever. Small ratchet, whatever works to get it off. And there's your mounting bracket. It's always good to test these slide pins, make sure they're working, because you want to have a problem with them later. They're a little stiff, but they're still spinning around. So now, obviously the rotor is probably going to need some force, which I have my nice big 3-pound hammer here for. So if it's stuck on, which most of them will be, just give it a good whack, or 500 whacks, however many it takes. But see, the back here, all this rust and all these pits, that's what's making the vibration. So now we'll get the nice new shiny rotor in. Okay. There we go. And this thing is really oily. For some reason it has to be. And if you have new hardware with your brake pads, that's these silver, well, the metal shim plate things, go ahead and change them. They brought me all this stuff off of Rock Auto, so it is what it is. And you reinstall your caliper bracket and your bracket bolts. And return back to the ratchet to tighten these down with. give it a few good oomph or joints foot-pounds for that. You don't have to do that on the caliper bolts themselves, but I like to make sure the brackets aren't gonna fall apart on them. Okay. So now we're onto the brake pads. And Subaru pads have these tabs here. So you got to make sure you match the tabs. And this has the circles for the rear. So this one goes on the rear. Front one of the caliper. And then the front one has the same tab. Okay, that's kind of weird, but whatever works. Apparently it's going to be a little bit of song and dance to get these in. So it's not playing nice at all. And I don't know why. Alright, this is gonna really make me really upset here if it doesn't start straightening out. Come on now.
Do you need a galvanized garbage can to store any tools or anything in your shed?
Okay. I don't know why this is beating me up like this. Alright, I'm going to pause this for a minute so I can try to figure this out. Alright guys, sorry about that. It's only a second for you guys, but I had to turn the wheel. Now, as you can see, this little hook here has one on each side, and you got to get that into a groove. And the inside groove is kind of hard to find. So I ended up turning the wheel. So there you got it, your brakes are installed. So remember, at least on the front brakes, there's a little hook tab that you got to get in there first. And since I got the wheel turned, you can see the 17s are already in. So we're going to take the caliper and remount that. And stick the 14mm bolts back into the slide pins. And then you just tighten them down as well. A couple grunts for each one. Make sure they're tight. Here we go. And that there is a complicated way of doing front brake pads on at least a 2012 Subaru Legacy that my daughter has. So I probably fought with that for like 10 minutes, so I didn't think you needed to see that. But till the next video, if you like it, comment, subscribe. Till the next one, Y'all have fun.